Kang Dae-jung had one rule above all others: never owe anyone. Debts were chains. Chains made you weak. And weakness got you killed. But when a bullet ripped through his chest in a Chicago alley, it was a South African trauma surgeon who brought him back from the edge of death. Lindiwe Zulu didn't care who he was. Didn't care about his empire. She was a doctor, she saved lives. But saving the most ruthless mafia boss in America came with a price she never expected. Now his enemies want her dead. And he wants something far more dangerous. He wants her heart. Before we dive into this dark romance, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. This story will have you holding your breath until the very last word. And if it touches your soul, share it. Someone out there needs to hear this. Now, let's begin. The emergency room at Chicago General was chaos, organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Lindiwe Zulu moved through it like water through rocks, her surgeon's hands steady, her mind sharp despite being on hour 16 of her shift. At 32, she was the youngest head of trauma surgery in the hospital's history. Not because of luck, because of skill. Dr. Zulu. A nurse rushed toward her. Incoming. Multiple GSWs, ETA 2 minutes. How many? 3 patients. 1 critical. Lost him twice in the ambulance. Lindiwe was already moving toward the trauma bay, her worn sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. She'd done this 1,000 times. Gunshot wounds were practically routine in this part of Chicago. But nothing about tonight would be routine. The doors burst open, paramedics flooding in with gurneys. 2 patients went left, stable enough for the residents. The third. Lindiwe's breath caught. He was massive, at least 6'2", built like someone who knew violence intimately. Black hair matted with blood. Tattoos visible beneath his shredded shirt, dragons and tigers, and something that looked like a serpent coiling up his neck. And his chest was a war zone. What do we have? She demanded, already pulling on fresh gloves. Male, early 30s. 2 GSWs to the chest, 1 to the abdomen. Lost him 3 times en route. BP's crashing. I need or 3 prepped now. She was checking his pupils, his pulse, the spread of blood. Someone page Dr. Harrison. And get me 4 units of Oneg. Dr. Zulu, the paramedic lowered his voice. You should know, he's Kang Dae-jung. The name hit her like ice water. Everyone knew that name. The Korean Mafia boss who controlled half of Chicago's underworld. The man who made politicians disappear and empires crumble. The monster. I don't care if he's the president, Lindiwe snapped. He's my patient. Move. What followed was 6 hours of surgery. 6 hours of fighting death itself. 6 hours of her hands inside a man who had probably ordered more killings than she could count. 6 hours of refusing to let him slip away. Not because of who he was, but because of who she was. He's stabilizing, Dr. Harrison said finally, exhaustion heavy in his voice. You did the impossible, Lindiwe. She stripped off her bloody gloves, staring at the man on the table. Even unconscious, he radiated danger. The serpent tattoo on his neck seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. He's alive, she said quietly. That's what matters. But as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that saving his life had just changed hers forever. She was right. He woke 3 days later. Lindiwe was doing her rounds when the nurse called her. Patient in room 412 was conscious and asking for the doctor who saved him. Tell him I'm busy, she said without looking up from her chart. He's very insistent. And I'm very busy. She didn't have time for grateful gangsters. She had patients who deserved her attention, good people with families and futures, not criminals who. Dr. Zulu. The voice came from behind her. Deep. Rough. Accented with something she couldn't quite place. She turned and found herself face to face with him. Kang Dae-jung stood in the hallway, hospital gown doing nothing to diminish his presence. He should have been bedridden. He should have been weak. Instead, he looked like a predator temporarily caged. You should be in bed, she said flatly. I should be dead. His dark eyes studied her face with unnerving intensity. Why aren't I? Because I'm good at my job. No. He stepped closer, and she held her ground despite every instinct screaming danger. You spent 6 hours rebuilding organs that should have been beyond repair. You broke 3 hospital protocols to get experimental equipment. You refused to let 3 separate specialists call time of death. His voice dropped. Why? Lindiwe met his gaze without flinching. Because every life matters. Even yours. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe. Or recognition of something he didn't expect. You really believe that? I know that. She pointed toward his room. Now get back in bed before you tear your stitches and waste my work. The corner of his mouth twitched. Are you ordering me around? I'm your doctor. In this hospital, I outrank everyone. Including you. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he laughed, a rough, rusty sound, like he didn't do it often. What's your name? Dr. Zulu. Your real name. She shouldn't have told him. But something about his intensity, his focus, made the words slip out. Lindiwe. Lindiwe, he repeated, and the way he said it, like he was memorizing it, like it mattered, sent a shiver down her spine. I owe you a debt. You don't owe me anything. I did my job. You saved my life. His expression hardened. In my world, that means something. Whether you want it to or not. Before she could respond, 2 men in expensive suits appeared at the end of the hallway. His people, obviously. Security. Muscle. Boss, one of them said urgently. We need to move. The Yamamoto clan knows you're here. Dae-jung didn't take his eyes off Lindiwe. Get the car. But I said get the car. His voice was ice. They scrambled to obey. When they were gone, he turned back to her. You need to leave this hospital. Excuse me. The people who shot me, they'll know I survived. They'll find out who saved me. His jaw tightened. They'll come for you. That's ridiculous. I'm a doctor. This is a hospital. They bombed a children's hospital in Seoul to send a message. His voice was quiet. Deadly. They don't care about innocent lives. They care about leverage. And you, his eyes swept over her face, you just became the biggest leverage in Chicago. Fear gripped her throat, but she refused to show it. I can take care of myself. I'm sure you can. He reached into his pocket, somehow he had a pocket, despite the hospital gown, and pulled out a card. Black. Simple. Just a phone number embossed in silver. When they come, and they will come, call this number. He pressed it into her hand, his fingers warm against hers. I pay my debts, Dr. Zulu. Whether you want me to or not. Then he was gone, his people sweeping him away like he'd never been there at all. Lindiwe stood in the empty hallway, clutching a business card that felt like a bomb. What had she done? The answer came 3 nights later. She was leaving the hospital after another 18-hour shift when she noticed them. 2 men in a black SUV, watching her. Not even trying to hide. Her heart raced, but she kept walking. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe. A hand grabbed her arm, yanking her into an alley. She fought instantly, elbow to the throat, knee to the groin, but there were 3 of them, and they were professionals. Within seconds, she was pinned against the brick wall, a gun pressed to her temple. Where is Kang Dae-jung? The man holding her had a thick Japanese accent and dead eyes. I don't know. He was my patient. He left. Lie again and I blow off your kneecaps. The gun shifted downward. Where is he? I told you. The gunshot cracked through the night. But it wasn't aimed at her. One of her attackers dropped, blood pooling beneath him. The other 2 spun, drawing weapons, but they were too slow. Shadows exploded into the alley, men in black, moving with lethal precision. The fight was over in seconds. And then he was there. Kang Dae-jung emerged from the darkness, still moving carefully. She could tell his wounds were bothering him, but his presence was undeniable. He wore all black, no hospital gown now, and the serpent tattoo on his neck seemed to writhe in the streetlight. You should have called, he said calmly, stepping over a body to reach her. Lindiwe's legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. I thought I could handle it. You did handle it. You bought yourself 30 seconds. He tilted her chin, examining her face. Are you hurt? No. Just. She hated how her voice wavered. Just angry. His smile was dark. Good. Angry is useful. What happens now? She demanded. Am I supposed to hide forever? Give up my career, my life, because I made the mistake of saving you? No. His hand dropped from her face. Now you let me protect what's mine. I'm not yours. You saved my life. His eyes burned into hers. In my world, that makes you more mine than anything I've ever owned. I'm not property. No, you're not. He stepped closer, and she felt the heat radiating from him despite the cold night air. You're something far more dangerous. You're someone who sees me as a patient, not a monster. Someone who yelled at me to get back in bed. Someone who isn't afraid. I'm terrified, she admitted. But you're still standing here. Still arguing with me. Still refusing to bow. His voice softened, barely. That makes you the bravest person I've ever met. She didn't have a response to that. Come with me, he said. Not as a prisoner. Not as leverage. As someone I'm choosing to protect. Why? Because I pay my debts. A pause. And because I want to. She should have said no. Should have called the police, filed a report, done something sensible. Instead, she found herself getting into his armored SUV. And that was how Dr. Lindiwe Zulu entered the world of Kang Dae-jung. The safe house was nothing like she expected. Not some dingy warehouse or sterile compound. It was a penthouse, glass walls overlooking the Chicago skyline, modern art on the walls, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. Guest room is down the hall, Dae-jung said, shrugging off his jacket. You have full access to everything except the West Wing. That's business. Business, she repeated flatly. You mean the part where you're a criminal. I mean the part that keeps you alive. He turned to face her. Make no mistake, doctor. The people who came for you tonight won't stop. The Yamamoto clan sees you as a weakness to exploit. As long as I'm alive and you're unprotected, you're a target. And if I stayed here, I wouldn't be. If you stay here, anyone who touches you dies. Simple. Matter of fact. Like discussing the weather. She should have been horrified. Instead, she felt a strange relief. How long? Until the Yamamotos are no longer a threat. And how long is that? His smile was cold. That depends on how quickly they die. Lindiwe spent the next 3 weeks learning his world. Not the violence, he kept that away from her, disappeared for hours or sometimes days at a time, returning with shadowed eyes and bloodied knuckles he never explained. But the quiet moments, those she learned. She learned that he woke before dawn every day, practiced martial arts alone in his private gym, then read news reports in 3 languages while drinking black coffee. She learned that he hated hospitals, the smell, he admitted once, reminds me of my mother's death, but tolerated her checking his wounds because she was the one doing it. She learned that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a knife fight when he was 17. That he'd killed his first man at 15. That he hadn't chosen this life, it had been forced on him by a father who saw children as weapons. Why are you telling me this? She asked one night, as they sat on the balcony watching the city lights. Because you asked. He didn't look at her. Most people don't ask. They assume they know what I am. And what are you? Finally, he turned. A monster. A necessary evil. The thing that keeps worse things in the shadows. That's what others say you are. She held his gaze. I asked what you think you are. Silence stretched between them, heavy, loaded with things neither of them were saying. I don't know anymore, he admitted finally. I've been what others needed for so long. I forgot how to be anything else. Lindiwe reached out, her doctor's fingers tracing the edge of his tattoo, the serpent coiling up his neck. Then maybe, she said softly, it's time to figure it out. The shift happened slowly. Late-night conversations became a ritual. She'd tell him about South Africa, about growing up in Durban, about her grandmother who taught her that healing was sacred, about the scholarship that brought her to America. He'd listen with an intensity that made her feel seen in a way no one had before. Why medicine? He asked once. Because I was tired of watching people die and feeling helpless. She stared at her hands. My father was shot when I was 12. Gang violence. He bled out before the ambulance came. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be better. She met his eyes. That's what my grandmother said. Grief is useless unless it pushes you to change something. Is that why you saved me? To change something? I saved you because it's what I do. She paused. But keeping you alive, that's becoming something else. The air between them crackled. Lindiwe. Don't. She stood abruptly. Don't say something we can't take back. Why not? Because this, she gestured between them, this isn't real. This is adrenaline and proximity and the fact that you're the only person I see for days at a time. He rose slowly, closing the distance between them. Is that what you think? It's what I know. Then you don't know much. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, dark, woodsy, dangerously addictive. I've had women throw themselves at me for money, power, protection. I've never wanted any of them. And you want me? I want. He struggled with the words. I want to be someone you could want. And I have no idea how to do that. It was the vulnerability that broke her. Not his power, not his protection, not the way he looked at her like she was the only light in his darkness. The vulnerability. I don't need you to be anything, she whispered. I just need you to be honest. I am being honest. His forehead pressed against hers. You terrify me. You make me want things I've never wanted. You make me question every rule I've ever lived by. What rules? Never show weakness. Never trust anyone. His hands cupped her face. Never fall in love. The word hung between them like a live wire. And are you, she breathed. Falling. I fell the moment you ordered me back to bed. His laugh was broken. I just didn't know what it was. She kissed him first. Not gentle. Not hesitant. She kissed him like she'd been drowning and he was air. He responded instantly, pulling her against him, one hand tangling in her braids, the other pressing against the small of her back. This was madness. This was impossible. This was wrong. But it felt more right than anything she'd ever known. Everything changed after that night. Not in the obvious ways. They didn't suddenly declare their love, didn't make promises they couldn't keep. But the air between them shifted. Charged. Every glance held weight. Every accidental touch sparked fire. And Dae-jung. Dae-jung became someone else around her. Still dangerous. Still ruthless to his enemies. But with her, soft. Protective. Almost reverent. You're staring again, she said one morning, catching him watching her over his coffee. I'm observing. There's a difference? When it's you. His eyes darkened. No. She threw a napkin at him. But she was smiling. The Yamamoto problem escalated in the 6th week. Dae-jung had been working to dismantle their operations, systematically, brutally, in ways Lindiwe didn't ask about. But they struck back. A car bomb outside one of his restaurants. An attempted hit on Junwoo, his second-in-command. And then, the photos. They arrived at the penthouse by courier. Photos of Lindiwe at the hospital, at a grocery store she'd been allowed to visit, under guard, even sleeping through the penthouse window from some distant rooftop. The message was clear, we can reach her anytime. Dae-jung's rage was terrifying. She found him in his office, the photos scattered on his desk, his hands gripping the edge so hard his knuckles were white. They're trying to provoke you, she said calmly, stepping inside. Don't let them. They're threatening you. His voice was barely controlled. That's not provocation. That's a declaration of war. Then end it. She moved closer. Not by reacting emotionally. By being smarter than them. He looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. You're not scared. I'm terrified. But fear doesn't help. She touched his face, turning him toward her. What would hurt them most? Not violence. Violence is expected. What would destroy them? His jaw worked. Exposure. Their legitimate businesses depend on secrecy. If their connections to trafficking, to arms dealing, were made public, then make them public. It's not that simple. We'd need evidence. Documentation. Things that are locked away in their compound. So get them. He stared at her. You're suggesting I raid the Yamamoto compound. I'm suggesting you use your brain instead of your guns. She smiled grimly. You have resources. Use them. And when you bring them down, do it so completely they can never rise again. The silence stretched. Then Dae-jung laughed, not the cold laugh she'd heard before, but something warmer. Admiring. My advisors have been suggesting half measures for weeks. He shook his head. And my doctor just outlined a better strategy in 30 seconds. I'm not just a doctor. I'm a South African who grew up watching how power really works. Her chin lifted. We survive by being smarter, not stronger. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. What did I do to deserve you? You almost died. I saved you. Here we are. Here we are, he echoed. And I'm never letting you go. The raid happened 2 weeks later. Lindiwe wasn't there for the violence, she'd made that clear. Her hands were for healing, not harm. But she was there for the aftermath. Dae-jung returned at dawn, exhausted and bloodied, but victorious. In his hands was a hard drive containing everything, the Yamamoto clan's darkest secrets, enough evidence to destroy them 100 times over. It's done, he said, collapsing onto the couch. Their leaders are dead or in custody. Their finances are frozen. Their allies are scattering. Lindiwe sat beside him, examining his wounds with practiced efficiency. And you? I'm alive. He caught her hand, pressing it against his chest. Because of you. Your strategy. Your belief that I could be more than violence. You've always been more than violence. She bandaged a cut on his arm. You just needed someone to remind you. Stay. The word hung in the air. I am staying. I'm right here. No. He sat up, wincing slightly. I mean, stay. Not because of protection. Not because of debts. Stay because you want to. Her hands stilled. Dae-jung. I know what I am. I know I can't offer you normal. I can't offer you safety or simplicity or any of the things you deserve. His voice cracked. But I can offer you honesty. Partnership. A life where you're never invisible, never overlooked, never treated as less than the queen you are. I don't need to be a queen. No, you don't need it. His eyes burned into hers. But you deserve it. And I want to give it to you. If you'll let me. Lindiwe's heart thundered. This was insane. She was a doctor. He was a crime lord. Their worlds shouldn't intersect, shouldn't merge, shouldn't. But they had. And somewhere along the way, she'd stopped wanting to leave. I have conditions, she said finally. Hope flickered in his eyes. Name them. I keep working. Not here, at the hospital. I'm a surgeon. That's who I am. That doesn't change. Done. I don't participate in your business. I don't want to know about the violence, the deals, any of it. My hands stay clean. Done. And she took a breath. We take this slow. No labels. No expectations. We figure out what this is, together. He smiled, a real smile, rare and precious. Done. She leaned forward and kissed him, slow and sweet. Then I'll stay. The months that followed were unlike anything Lindiwe had imagined. She returned to the hospital with significantly more security than before and reclaimed her life as a surgeon. Word had spread about her vacation, but no one asked questions. In Chicago, some things were better left unknown. And Dae-jung. He changed. Not dramatically, he was still ruthless in his dealings, still the king of an empire built on shadows. But around her, he was different. Softer. More present. He'd show up at the hospital with dinner after her longest shifts. He learned to cook South African food, badly at first, but improving. He listened to her grandmother's recipes like they were sacred texts. You're ruining the pap, she laughed one evening, watching him struggle with the maize porridge. I'm improving it. That's not how pap works. Then teach me. She moved behind him, her hands guiding his on the wooden spoon. They ended up burning the pap anyway, too distracted by other things. But they tried again the next night. And the next. 1 year after their meeting, Lindiwe stood on the penthouse balcony, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. So much had changed. She was no longer just a surgeon. She was the partner of the most powerful man in Chicago. But she was still herself. Still healing. Still fighting for the lives that mattered. You're thinking loudly, Dae-jung said, appearing beside her. I'm thinking about how strange life is. She leaned against him. A year ago, you were bleeding out on my operating table. Now I can't imagine life without you. He turned her toward him, his expression serious. Lindiwe. I want to ask you something. Her heart stuttered. If this is a proposal, it's not. He smiled slightly. I know you're not ready for that. Neither am I. Relief and something almost like disappointment mixed in her chest. Then what? Want to build something with you. Not marriage, not yet. But partnership. Real partnership. He pulled out a document, official-looking, covered in legal text. What is this? It's a charter. For a foundation. He watched her face carefully. Healthcare access for underserved communities. South Africa. Korea. Chicago. Anywhere we can reach. She stared at the document. You want to build hospitals? I want to build something that matters. With you. His voice softened. I've spent my life destroying things. Taking things. I want to know what it feels like to create something good. Tears pricked her eyes. Dae-jung, you taught me that healing is sacred. That every life matters. He cupped her face. Let me prove I was listening. She kissed him, fierce and full of everything she couldn't put into words. Yes, she breathed against his lips. Let's build something good. The foundation launched 6 months later. Lindiwe became the face of it, a respected surgeon advocating for global healthcare access. Dae-jung stayed in the shadows, as he preferred, but his money and influence opened doors that would have been locked forever. They built clinics in Soweto, Seoul, and Chicago's South Side. They trained doctors. They saved lives. You know what the press is calling you? Junwoo asked her one afternoon, scrolling through news on his phone. Something terrible, probably. The surgeon queen. He grinned. They say you've got the most powerful man in America wrapped around your finger. Lindiwe laughed. I prefer to think of it as mutual wrapping. From across the room, Dae-jung caught her eye and smiled, that rare, soft smile he reserved only for her. Definitely mutual, he agreed. 5 years after that night in the alley, they stood in the finished clinic in Durban, South Africa. It was everything Lindiwe had dreamed of: state-of-the-art equipment, trained local staff, access for anyone who needed it. Your grandmother would be proud, Dae-jung said quietly, watching children play in the waiting area. She would have liked you. Lindiwe smiled. After threatening you a bit first. Naturally. She turned to face him, this man who had started as a patient and become her partner. Her equal. Her home. Thank you, she said. For what? For letting me in. For letting me see past the monster. She touched the serpent tattoo on his neck. For becoming someone even you didn't know you could be. You made me that person. His hands found her waist. Every rule I broke, every wall I tore down, it was because of you. Not because of me. For you. She cupped his face. I just showed you the door. You walked through it yourself. He kissed her long and deep, not caring about the stares they were getting. When they broke apart, she was laughing. What? Nothing. Just. She shook her head. When I saved your life, I never imagined this. Neither did I. He pulled her closer. But I wouldn't change a single moment. Even the parts where I yelled at you? Especially those parts. They left the clinic hand in hand, walking into the African sunset. 2 people from opposite worlds. 2 souls who shouldn't have met. But they had. And together, they'd built something no one could have predicted. Not a kingdom. Not an empire. A partnership. A purpose. A love that broke every rule and created new ones worth following. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe. And share this with someone who needs to believe that love can transform even the darkest souls. Drop a comment below. What was your favorite moment? The first meeting in the hospital? The strategic planning session? The foundation launch? I want to hear from you. And remember, sometimes the most ruthless hearts are just waiting for the right person to show them another way. Until next time, keep believing in love that breaks every rule.